or man, or sky. This brief stay in you is only just a true law of human.
Or do you still have time for chaos?
Jesse, that's a very powerful artwork you've got in the pavilion there. Would you like to tell us about the story behind it?
I suppose Tremble Tremble began from, I had a really strong interest in the work of Silvia Federici, and in particular Caliban and the Witch, and I had been really thinking about how there was this moment in Ireland around the really well-known repeal of the Eighth Amendment movement and the fight for body autonomy, and I was thinking a lot about how that political movement in Ireland could be mobilised as a kind of act of imagination. So I started thinking about the law as something that could be estranged or made abstract. So I started to invent a law called Neutera Giganti, which proposes that the mothering body is actually a giantess, and all laws have to be subject to the law of the bodily territory of the mother, of the woman. So this idea of trembling is also an idea of the body trembling, but it comes originally from a movement in Italy in the 1970s, a feminist movement which called for the return of the witch, and this kind of trembling sense of being on the precipice of massive political change, but also how that political change and how the present is based on a kind of geology of feminist experience. So trying to think back, not just through thinking about feminism through kind of Western waves of feminism, but to think of it in a more kind of sedimentary, layered way that feels prehistoric and continuous between the past and the present.
There's a sort of peeling away of these layers of patriarchy as well, isn't there? I believe that in your research you uncovered all kinds of interesting things that have made their presence felt in the work.
Yeah, I think one of the simplest ideas in the work around the idea of patriarchy is from this sense of thinking through the mother's body, this idea, and it's in probably what's considered the final scene of the film, where Temperance Lloyd approaches the audience and kind of has that kind of breaking of the fourth wall, and her style of encounter with the audience is almost like the way a mother would turn into the crib of an infant, you know, nurturing, but then has this kind of edge to it that you don't know where that's going to go. So I had been really interested in the idea that there's a locked cognition in all of us, that idea of the giant maternal body perching over the crib is the first encounter we have with another subject. So if that could be mobilised, if that kind of unconscious memory could be mobilised, we wouldn't have the patriarchy, because that is such a powerful image of women, and we've all encountered it. It's our first recognition of another human, is that.
How did you go about evoking the atmosphere, the amazing atmosphere you have in there, which is kind of womb-like but also primal, enclosing the movement of the curtains that sort of embrace you.
Yeah, the arms kind of wrap around you, sometimes menacingly, sometimes really nurturingly, and then the elbow bones are a kind of anchor physically in the space.
Tell me about the bones.
The bones are based on Lucy Australopithecus, and I'm really interested in moments when the dead re-emerge, and Lucy Australopithecus obviously re-emerged in the 1970s in the middle of like that moment of the second wave, and kind of pointing towards the possibility of the female body in this really complex way. So I was really drawn to kind of referencing Lucy as this kind of mythic figure that could imagine a kind of ancestral memory for women's experience that goes really, really deep to a point of fossilization. So thinking about these two ideas of feminism and the body as having this like temporality of possibility, that we all eventually become fossils as well, and to think through that kind of way of thinking through time allows us to open up a way of thinking about political experience, which isn't just about the immediate or the now, but is about the constant struggles and layers of
manufactured
experience.
reality.
Yeah.
The texts are really interesting. There's a number of different texts that get spoken or written across the screens. Tell me about those.
The first text that you encounter is spoken backwards. It's from the Malleus Maleficarum, which was known as the Hammer of the Witches, which was a book that was written in the 15th century, and it was used as a kind of instructional tool to how to prosecute women for being witches. So it catalogued disobedient behaviour like midwifery or casting spells to make cows not produce milk, and lots of strange abstractions of reality and possibility. But in the film I had it spoken backwards as a way of thinking about the idea of language and repeal. And in this time of this kind of push towards the desire to repeal something like the 8th Amendment in the Irish Constitution, that idea of how we can push language backwards to kind of unravel the law or like undo this kind of moment of law in a kind of magical spell. The rest of the text in the film is just text I wrote and developed myself and kind of worked through it with Olwen as a kind of performance style.
Tell me about Olwen. She's the actress who plays this giantess. And
she's incredible. Olwen Fouéré, incredible actress. I've always wanted to work with her. She just has this amazing way of holding experience and intelligence and articulation in every single subtle gesture of her body. So in terms of working with a performer who on camera is so nuanced and big anyway, to have the opportunity to then turn them into a giant is just exponentially fun.
Tremendous presence,
Yeah.
Even when she's small though, on the screen as in the beginning.
Yeah, she's an incredible performer. Such a deep kind of bodily knowledge of the details of communication in performance.
Your road to satin, which the harvest that you sow, all that is has its other, as above shall be below. All that is has its other, as above shall be below. I drink your wine and spoil the barrels, your house in ruins at my feet. My broken bones shall be a weapon, chaos is the bread I eat.
Your work has been much talked about, and somebody mentioned earlier that there was quite an impact that you notice on the work with the people who are witnessing it. Can you tell me a bit about that? The various reactions?
Yeah, because I think one of the things I wanted to make was to make something that wasn't just a representation of the story of feminism or this kind of seismic feminism or this kind of return of witch power. I also wanted to create a pavilion that incorporated some of the physical and material apparatus of witchcraft. So there's a circulation in the space. Some of the aspects of the exhibition have been communicated to me through tarot cards, or have come together through processes of dreaming. So it's deeply connected to my unconscious as well as my research and political, rational conscious. So it's a merging of those things. How can we merge the world of the cerebral and the intellectual with also what we might feel politically? And I think that's really important at this time in terms of how people feel very, very confused with this kind of break in truth and language. And I think it's also a break between our bodies and our conscious minds. And I think we have to find a way to access things that are actually held in our body and articulate them.
So there's a choreography to the
there's
experience
a
of the piece.
physical movement, there's physical bodies, there will always be a physical body in the space of Tremble Tremble.
And you said that there was a spell designed into the architecture of it, almost.
Yeah. Well, I had wanted for a long time to stop thinking about making art as a way of displaying things, but to think about it as a way of arranging objects almost like ruins, and to kind of see how they lie and how the relationships that they set up in the world can create a kind of alchemy, and allow that to open up and then see what unfolds when you allow those pieces to fall where they may on the...
So what manner of spell is it that we're
The
experiencing?
the first manner of spell is you're given a clue to it at the entrance. There's this piece of legal ephemera that is used within it. The first is to really promote and manifest psychically for the repeal of the 8th Amendment in the Irish Constitution. So that's the first energy that's placed into it, and from that the unraveling. But really it's from the cognition of the mother as the site of this really potent cognitive power. So when people see Temperance Lloyd coming at them in this way, it is meant to really trigger for people a hidden cognitive kind of spell in their own brain, that they might remember what that sensation felt like to be the Lilliputian in relationship to the female body, and how that might spark something.
And the scale of the Arsenale really lends itself to this sort of dwarfing of the viewer.
It's interesting how people come into the space quite confident of, like, I'm at the vernissage, and then you can almost see it. Being in the space in the dark is really enjoyable, because you can really observe the reactions when people haven't encountered the work yet, and just that kind of sense of scale, how it kind of shifts physical reactions and bodies in the space.
And what's your favourite reaction been, if you've observed people?
There was a baby that really liked it, and there was a child that just was really enraptured by this huge witch, and just seen it with like joy of like, yes, of course, all women look really big to me. So it just children seem to really click with it, but I think that's because they're closer to that kind of memory of the female body in this way.
It's a really fascinating piece. Thank you.
Thank you.